Thank you, everyone, and it is indeed a pleasure to be able to present to you again on this Australian Technical Committee Seminar for 2020 on the activities of Study Committee C2. My name is Greg Hesse. I'm the convener of the Australian panel for C2 and member of Study Committee C2. Study Committee C2, which is Power System Operation and Control, has as its scope covers the technical, human resource and institutional aspects of the conditions for the secure and economic operation of the power system, while also protecting against system disintegration, equipment damage and human injuries. In this regard, C2 is somewhat unique amongst the CGRA study committees in that it does include human and institutional factors, along with the more traditional technical aspects relating to power system operation. And we see this come out in some of the activities amongst the working groups, which we'll talk about a little later in this presentation. Turning to the structure of C2, you would see our study committee chair. I should say that after our most recent study committee meeting, a new chair has taken over. Jaime Deriva Macedo from Brazil has taken over from Susanna de Graaf. For those who may know Susanna, she will of course be remaining very active in CGRA, and she's a member of the CGRA Science and Engineering editorial panel. In relation to the structure of our working groups in C2, you can see through the colour coding, they are structured around the key themes, and that's fairly consistent with that multifaceted aspect of C2's scope and activities. And the yellow working groups in the middle particularly focus around not simply control centre infrastructure, but also the human resource aspects and human interactions relevant to power system operation and control elements. You might also notice that fully 25% of our working groups in C2 are convened by Australians, with Frank Kriske convening the working group C224 relating to fire starts and their consequences for system operations, and Babek, who is convening working group C226, looking at power system restoration techniques that account for our rapidly changing power system and generation mix. So there's lots of activity around that operational planning and performance analysis and understanding the changing technical performance of the power system. So that's been a key focus of our work within C2. We also do a lot of work with other study committees. We've got two joint working groups, one with B4 and one with C4, and we're looking also at developing other joint working groups in the near future. If I turn now to our key highlights of activities in 2020 across Study Committee C2. Since I last presented to you, we haven't had any new technical brochures published in the last 12 months, though there are a number that we're looking to get published within the next 4 to 6 months as we come into next year. There will be quite a few, so when I report back to you next year, there'll be a lot more activity in the technical brochure space. But we've not been idle. There's been tutorials by Jan van Putten relating to our joint working group with B4, and Jan's been very active in this space around tutorials for power electronic based equipment. We had a webinar which was based around previous joint working group in C2, C4, 37, and another webinar from a joint working group with D2. A couple of quite interesting articles that have appeared in the CSE, CGRA Science and Engineering Journal. The System Operational Challenges from the Energy Transition, which was quite a multifaceted paper, and one of the key one, and I'd encourage you to go and have a read of, is relating to power system operational resilience, what it means and where we stand. And that's quite an active working group that will be publishing a technical brochure in the new year. And that article had quite a significant contribution by Dean Sharafi from AEMO, and we look forward to seeing more from the technical brochure from that working group. If we turn now to the e-session in Paris that was held during August, Certainly one of the highlights for many people in the C-grade power session is the large disturbance workshop on the Monday afternoon. It's certainly the must-have ticket that first week. Number of really interesting events that were covered, and the focus of this large disturbance workshop, which is held joint between C2 and C5, is we're really looking to see where a single large disturbance has both power system operation and market-facing aspects associated with it. So there were some great presentations on this large disturbance workshop this year. Highlighted a number of the ones which were particularly relevant for power system operations here on this slide. Many people would have heard about the Great Britain low frequency event. That had some great learnings for power system operations, especially around what loads might still be forming part of under frequency load shedding schemes, and even just the performance of loads now with increasing digitisation and potential for control system lockouts on loads, and that was relevant for the British railway network following that event. The Argentina blackout was again quite interesting, and talked a bit about the consequences of special protection schemes and how they can play out if they're not properly understood and reflected, and adjustments to reflect actual network reconfigurations that may occur. We talked about the Australian system separation events in August 2018. This was the events where Queensland and South Australia separated from the rest of the NEM, and my thanks to Chad van der Walt from AEMO for taking the time to present on that event. And again, that was quite well received. If we look at the papers that were presented, there were 3 Australian papers that were presented as part of the C2. There was one paper under our preferential subject 1, which is around capabilities required for future power system operation. And this was largely a follow-on paper from the previous Paris session that had talked about low system strength conditions from a C4 power system performance perspective. This was almost a follow-on paper from that, say, well, what has been our real operational experience with inverter-based resources under low system strength conditions in Australia. Preferential subject 3 was a joint session between C2 and C6, looking at system operation challenges with increasing use of distributed energy resources. And we had 2 excellent presentations from those on those topics there, as you can see. If I turn to the study committee meeting for C2, in addition to our normal matters that we would cover in our study committee meeting, we had a couple of quite interesting technical presentations, and Frank Kriske was able to present on the impacts for Australian utilities of our 2019-2020 fire season in Australia. And Frank was able to do a really good job and impress upon people involved the scale of the fires that were experienced across southern and eastern Australia, and made excellent use of some great visuals and graphics in the presentation to really get across to people what we experienced in that last Australian summer, and you can see some of the photos there in this presentation. And Jaime Macedo, our incoming study committee chair, gave a presentation on the impact of COVID-19 on the Brazilian power system operation. And it's certainly, in addition to the normal shifts in demand patterns and so on, there certainly included some particular challenges on the Brazilian power system related to minimum demands that are being seen as a result of COVID-19. And a final part of our study committee meeting, we talked about proposals for new working groups. Certainly looking at a new working group I mentioned between C2 and C5. Previously there was quite a long-lived joint working group that went through several iterations of terms of references. That working group was concluded about 12 months ago or so, with its final technical brochure published, and looking at creating terms of reference for a new joint C2-C5 working group in the near future. and also looking at a working group within C2 around the use of artificial intelligence in system operations. So what we lack in straight out volume, I think in C2, we try to focus on those things that will really be of most use and make the most impact for the people who are involved in operating our large and increasingly complicated power systems. Thank you.